recording. We're good.
All right. Welcome to our April meetup of MacAdmins. So we're just going to go right into the what's new segment. So, as we do every month, there's a new Office 2016 update. We'll talk a little bit about the bad luck since they finally disclosed what that was. There's another update to the JSS. We'll talk about that briefly. We'll talk about JNUC 2016 and some of the changes that they announced before that. And lastly, we'll plug the Penn State MacAdmins. So, Office 2016 updates, 15.21.1. Fixes the Outlook, bug fixes and all that. They did add some features. The add-ins are now available for Word and Excel. And I know everyone's excited about add-ins. Also, there's now a new archiving feature in Outlook. So yeah, it's basically they're calling it One Touch, and you click. It's supposed to be a archive icon in the ribbon. You click that, and it generates an archive folder, and you manually select to get that button on it and use it to that. I don't know if it's something we probably set up rules for that as well, but I haven't looked into it in any sort of depth since I just found out about it before our meetup tonight. So also, Office 2011 14.6.3 was updated again. So, and according to Paul Bowden in the Microsoft Slack channel, there should be a new volume licenser package released next month. So it'll probably be 15.21.1. So if you're using the volume license packager now, which is 15.17, you'll have a new package that you can upload, and then you don't have to chain all the updates to and you can start fresh with that one. So we're going to talk about bad luck. So they did announce what bad luck was, and it's essentially man-in-the-middle and denial of service exploits that is found in the SMB protocol. Microsoft and Samba have both patched them already. And if you go to the Bad Luck website, they mention some mitigation techniques for you to try if you're running an earlier version of Samba. Basically, it was much ado about nothing. The severity of it was not as billed. Yes, it wasn't. It didn't live up to the hype, essentially. You know. And there is already, Sadlock is essentially a parody website of the Bad Luck website. So please do check that out as well. I'm not sure if Apple's implementation of Samba is susceptible. I don't think they've said anything about it. And if they do, we probably won't see anything until the next iteration of server. So like maybe a 5.1 or 5.2. Whatever comes out with when they drop 10.11.5, that's probably when we'll see this patched when they come up with a new server version for that. If it affects Apple's invitation of Samba. Okay, and so another JSS update. 9.91 was released. So this just fixes 3 particular bugs. There is 2 iOS bugs and a bug with Windows-hosted JSS instances, which would not update inventory if they were running for Windows-hosted JSS. So that may affect some of you who are hosting on Windows. So I'm sure there's a timely release coming about a week after they drop 9.9. So. On the iOS bugs, one fixed an LDAP scoping issue, which basically if you had scoped apps to an LDAP group, it would actually remove the app. And another issue that if you upgraded to 9.9, there's some apps and configuration profiles were removed after upgrade. The Jamf Nation User Conference. They announced the dates. It's in October, as it usually is. The big thing about it is this is going to be the first JNUC with paid registration. All prior JNUCs before these were free registration. And this, obviously, as you can imagine, has caused some consternation as the announcement of it being a paid conference now was basically came as a surprise, and it affected a lot of people whose budgets are already locked, which happens to a lot of the EDU customers and probably some of their business and corporate customers as well. Who weren't expecting to shell out an additional $500 in personal development or training expenses this year. So, but they outlined their reasons, saying that the conference has essentially outgrown the government and has outgrown the resources that they have been putting into it. And in order to accommodate more people and offer more sessions, they're going to start charging. Currently, their early bird pricing is $4.99, which is, as of today, still, as of this year, is $100 cheaper than the MacAdmins conference. For everybody except EDU customers, the price will increase to $5.99 in May 4th. And then I think sometime in the summer, it'll jump to $7.99. And in the week before the conference, it jumps to $9.99. So, education people will have the early bird pricing until July. Then presumably it jumps up to $7.99 afterwards. So it wasn't specific.
Anyone plan on going?
I'm planning on going. Hopefully they accept my presentation. In which case they will refund me my registration. So if you want to go, maybe suggest a topic for a session, and if they accept you, then you don't actually have to pay them.
Talks about config profiles.
Could.
You have to pay to get out there, though.
You do have to pay to get out there. So yeah, and so the announcement, as you can imagine, as I said, caused a lot of consternation, mainly because of the timing. Because budgets were already set, people were expecting to go for free, and now they're going to shell out money. So we'll see how that affects attendance numbers this year. They probably will see a drop in attendance this year, only to see it go back up next year. But we'll see. These are actually the links down here. One is both from Dean Hager about the initial announcement and the announcement about the education pricing, which came up last week. So finally, we talk about MacAdmins. So I know I mentioned this last time, but I'm going to keep plugging it because it's A, close to us, B, it's Kent State, and we have MacAdmins from all over the world coming, doing sessions, and always great sessions. Price may be a little out of your range, but for these, if you can't go this year, definitely think about going next year. Because I'd love to have a big group from Philly there, so we can maybe take over. It just seems like Philly should be at Penn State, and there should be a lot of us. That's how I feel. So there's the website. Also, Jeremy and I will be speaking, so we want people to show up and come to our session. So,
Or heckle.
You can do
or
one.
heckle.
You can do one, not both.
So, and that's it.
You can do the $1,000.
With we'll have a little break for a minute or two while Alistair finishes setting up, and then he'll talk to us about Python and LS query, which should be fast.
Yeah, I already have one person on the Periscope, so that's just an adoring public that must be satisfied.
Right.
Let's see what happens. I said about a half an hour.
That's a slide.
Yeah.
Maybe switch it over to another.
Sorry about it. So we go. So, yay, you have to think the word.
Here. You're in. Now we got you.
Right. So now what I need to do is find out what arrangement I'm in. So we gotta go to the left. I've got to put this on the other side. Right, I'm gonna feel a bit more comfortable like that. So let's play. Would you like to play a game? Hello folks, hello Philly. I came here. And I'm in Philly for the first time in my life.
Your life? Really?
I think so. I could have been drugged and not know. But I believe.
Shanghai the third.
Wouldn't I know? I would have had scars or something. Something left in my body. A note. A tattoo. So, I'm here to talk about OS Query, but when I'm doing like a half-hour presentation versus like a Penn State hour and 15-minute long presentation, I'm trying to make it a little bit briefer and use kind of known things instead of going deep on researching a topic. And then I spent last weekend writing a script that used OS Query from Python because I was like, you know what, now I know how to do this so much better, I'm going to redo it again. For those of us that were in that AWebinar last year, when I also presented, I gave a presentation on iOS security. I am Alistair Banks. I'm at Alistair on the MacAdmins Slack. I would put at sacrilegious, but I'm really not tweeting all that often. I guess I'm using that for Periscope now. I don't know. It's around there for. When I was talking last year, there wasn't an FBI to try to help me with book sales, unfortunately. But Charles Edge and I would really appreciate it if anyone else wanted to look back at what iOS 8's version of security looked like. It's worth a plug. I got a royalty statement for only negative $150 at this point. So one day I'm keep playing. Today I'm going to give an introduction to OS Query, just to say, all right, if folks are not familiar with them, we're going to take it from brass tacks and accessing it from Python in specific. Since OS Query is versatile enough of a tool that you can access it in multiple ways. You can interact with it in a few different things. I'd be silly not to mention logging right off the bat, as that is their primary recommended way to use it at scale. So I'll touch on that briefly. But you can also run ad hoc commands in terminal or from scripts, or do some reporting with things like Jamf's Casper Suite or the Sal dashboard for Monkey. Sal actually got messed with by some changes in how they were doing it. They were actually calling the daemon versus what I was doing with the Jamf Casper Suite, where I was relying on OS Query I. And so when I have a pointer that actually shows up on a screen, OS Query I is the interactive shell for OS Query. When you're developing or testing or looking at combinations of the different things that you'd want to pull out of OS Query I is your intended playground or sandbox to do that in. Another way that you can interact with it is via the Python module that they develop for you and make sure that it's compatible with the releases. I actually used it as an auditing tool when I was trying to generate a customized inventory for the Albert Einstein School of Medicine. That's where I was in the Bronx this morning. My employer, Montefiore Medical Group, we are known by many names. We own a whole bunch of hospitals from the Bronx to southern Westchester, New York, and we run data centers for other hospitals. We are only now fully taking on support for the college, and they had no inventory / IT to a certain extent. They didn't have they had lots of pockets of people who were doing things like high performance computing and research. But instead of going directly into how I'm using that Python module and giving OS Query a proper introduction, come on, this is the obligatory gift section. Seeing code on slides and talking about Python. I'm going to demo some stuff, and hopefully when I tool around, you'll actually be able to see what I'm talking about, even if you're not Python savvy. It won't be so boring, But I do like to start off most of my presentations, as you see in the handout, with a, come on, let's get this over with. Give me the fast forward, the cliff notes, the Spark Notes. I'm too old for Spark Notes. I think Spark Notes is a thing though. The last time I saw a Barnes & Noble, may it rest in pieces, they had a Spark Notes. But borrowing Ed Marzak's line from all of his presentations, you may think to yourself, why do I want to use OS Query? Now it is. If you're getting an inventory from System Profiler, you're going to be waiting a long time. So I don't particularly appreciate how clunky it is in general. That's not necessarily to say that it's just in opposition to System Profiler, but when the OS Query guys ask the people on the client platform engineering at Facebook, what should we do next when it comes to features with OS Query? They're like, replace System Profiler already. Just everything it does. How's about we just take it on over? But I'm talking about a quick start. The first thing that you would need to do to get this thing and make it run, thanks to Sam Keeley, between this auto package run, I actually think I want to take credit for the install recipe. But anyway, I can look back at the PRs and take credit for other things enough. But if you go ahead and run this, it will install OS Query on your machine. Let's take down the Apple Store Network right now. Anyway. And then there's a bundled bash script that they install in the default path in user local, OS Query CTL. So it's totally inspectable. It's really readable bash. It's not so heavy on the case statements. It's actually a nice thing to audit for yourself. Like you can also, when you rebuild the packages, you can replace Facebook as the name because people really do think that Google is going to like steal their cat or something like that. People who are paranoid about daemons running on their machines having those labels, you can inspect a lot of this. You can see their build process. They're doing it on the open. OS Query CTL start gets the daemon running for you with some friendly defaults. Voila, receive bacon. For the hostname, CPU, and physical memory of the computer that it's running on, every hour it's going to log that to /var/log/OS Query results.log, which you can then parse, grep however you'd like, but also expand on where those queries are. And OS Query CTL, if you inspect that, would show you where it is that it's running that config. Or, I said you can interact with this with multiple ways. This is the site. I'm pretty sure that's the link. I checked some of my slides, some of them. But that is a GitHub repo that has Jamf Casper extension attributes. I wired up an ad hoc method of running OS Query that you can find in that repo for different categories of data that I felt was worth auditing. I recommend most of all of them. Probably one of the cleaner is the launch check, and it would be even more Python-y if I did a quick example. Let's do it live. Maybe Python's not your thing. I haven't actually open sourced all of it. But anyway, that's enough TLDR. All right, so like there's code out there. I talked about logging in the beginning, and I talked about how in EAs you can just ad hoc get. Facebook released OS Query as open source in late 2014. It landed on my radar around the Mac Brains session that Mike Arpaia gave at Facebook. They hosted in February 2015. That is still accessible on their Ustream live video page. They have the archives of those videos if you want to go through his Dropbox link of things to go through one at a time as like a workshop. It's still live as well, I believe. The only time that I actually paid attention to OS Query before that was when it hit the social medias with some type of indication that it was Mac specific, that they were trying to make something that was special for Macs. But the message to the world at large was also that you would pull data from a Mac or instrument it by making database queries in SQL. And in the hangover, I think, from CFPressD and everything, but it's in a database that's so efficient and obscure and difficult to interact with. I think that everybody was kind of like, thanks, but no thanks. Queries in SQL just to be able to do inventory, I'm not sure. And I would normally just point to the creators' past presentations, specifically for a Mac audience, about a tool to say, like, that's prior art that I can point to. Mike Arpaia was joined by Teddy Reed, another developer of OSQuery that is specifically in Facebook, that they were giving that presentation last year, and please just like stop it in the last 15 minutes when I get in front of the mic and I don't let anybody else talk. I did ask a couple of questions and was moved out of the way. They were discussing their specialized host intrusion detection needs. So some places are actually using this to replace the need for antivirus. They're thinking different. They're thinking outside the box. They're saying, if we look at the behavior instead of a pre-canned, oh, well, this is a signature and it matches, so it must be this malignant thing. How's about behavior of malignant things? Perhaps certain places don't find that as necessary. I'm not saying that the way that they explained it wasn't, like a great way for you to understand about the tool from why they developed it and how they're working on it, and centralized logging as their output, that they use Splunk, they use Chef to distribute these configs. All of those things have their own value as part of your whole tool set if you see value in them and have that type of infrastructure. So I'm actually going to go long on logging with OSQuery, logging in general as well, at Mac DevOps YBR in Vancouver right before Penn State in June. So I'm just going to like highlight some marquee features of OSQuery as something that you can point at your fleet. And if you do have that log aggregation, you're going to get a lot of the benefit out of it. But going back to how Facebook is deciding that they're going to develop this and deploy it, there are other DevOps-y type, large-scale tools in this space. And I'd say one of the few popular ones as a precursor to OSQuery is from the company formerly known as Puppet Labs with their Factor tool. I keep going Puppet the company, now that they changed their company name again recently. It's kind of annoying. Factor, like Puppet, was originally written in Ruby. It is now not. It is purpose-built to inform the configuration management tool Puppet. So just like you would say, okay, I'm going to move things from one smart group to another based on criteria you're returning, Factor will inform how Puppet builds configs on the fly sometimes. Chef is something at Facebook that back at London MacAdmin, what was the presentation in February that I attended and did not drink more than a couple of beverages at? MacAduck. If it quacks like a duck, it's a MacAduck. At that presentation, the videos are coming soon. Nate Walk gave quite a presentation on dynamically generating configuration profiles. They're open sourcing a lot of things from their Chef cookbooks or culinary palettes or whatever the heck they call it in Chef. That therefore you can use this Ruby-like DSL because if it's Ruby, it must be good. To use that for everything. When I say DSL, I mean a domain-specific language. So they have a problem of configs that they want to deliver with Chef and Ruby. They can deliver it. So I talked about Factor. That was originally written in Ruby, as was Puppet. Deployments like Google's Mac fleet use Factor for everything. They use Factor for so much. They wrote caching because the traffic on all of the different stuff was just a little bit too heavy for them. So they wanted to make sure that they only pull down new Factor inventory runs when things have actually changed. And that they open sourced just recently to their Google Mac Ops GitHub repo. At Facebook, they don't use Puppet. And it's not really a competition. But they probably have like 50,000 less Macs than Google. When, it's like Jay-Z said, once you have over 1 million, it doesn't even matter, right? Once you're at like 5 digits of Macs, come on. You have big problems because everything is a corner case, because a corner case of 1% is over 100 machines. Well, Facebook wanted OSQuery to be very efficient and native, more native than Ruby can be. Apple has been screwing with folks trying to access some frameworks from Ruby for quite some time now, and bumping to versions that perhaps Ruby developers were not ready for. There's another common tool talked about in this space besides Factor, OS X Collector. It's also at scale at Yelp. It's written in Python, but it's more to generate forensics data. As I understand it, I'm not 100% savvy, but after a machine has been discovered to have some type of funny business going on with it, that you will say, all right, there's been an incident, I would like to do digital forensic, have an incident response package to describe this event now. And it can look against virus total, it has lots of different features that are for that worldview called differ. I actually have no idea if it's pronounced like that, I just made that up. But so, they introduced OS Query, they decided we needed a new tool, we're going to put it out there into the world. They have extensive Python development experience. They actually also had history, some of the developers, with a tool in Python that was widely announced from Etsy that didn't quite do everything that everyone kind of hoped for it, and it didn't quite take the world by storm. So this time around, they said, you know what, we're going to make it just better than any other tool that could possibly exist, and we're going to do a lot of that development ourselves. And so in their announcement at the Security at Scale presentation that Mike Archea gave in 2014, they stated these as the goals. They wanted it to be easy enough for other people in the different parts of IT, including server admins, including everything along the chain, to be able to collaborate on the configs. They wanted fast and stable, so they could run this on their actual production Linux instances. So this is in prod across the platforms, as I understand it. I don't actually know if they run in prod at Facebook. I know that they don't have disks. That's crazy. But you know, they have different problems. You know, more money, more problems. They also needed to know that it wouldn't mess with or get messed up by developers' laptops homebrew, or other things they do when they're developing in Ruby homebrew, or problems that could happen to all of your management tools homebrew. Yet, they said, we are going to solve our dependency issues of building the things that it relies on homebrew, and you can install it with homebrew. So, not conflicting messages according to them, but they also have released packages, they have apt and yum repos, they want you to be able to access it, and Windows coming any day now, trademark. No, literally, they submitted docs. They haven't done a build and put it on the site yet, but they're preparing all of the documentation that you would kind of need to be able to use it on Windows. So the language they chose, not Python, not Ruby. The joke that I heard from Nate Walk was Objective C++. So how they wrote it. They wanted to assume that if the tool is so low level that it's listening in the least disruptive and minimally resource intensive way possible, they have lots of profiling tools for you to use as you build different sets of information. You can listen to more things. When it's super robust and super lightweight, you can just say, hey, I want to know about all this stuff in an event stream all the time. Let me get that all onto my logs. And then after something happened, it's kind of too late to be listening for stuff. So let's make it super lightweight that we can listen to it all before you need an incident response type situation. One last lecture-y point about Hyperloop stuff before I get into the real-world usage. I recommend folks start with what I'm about to get into, but the DSL that I spoke about in terms of Puppet, they chose SQLite 3. So if you want to know what specifically we're talking about in how they build the queries, it's the same as Apple stores a lot of their stuff on disk. And they are contributing to the spec of SQLite. They got some patches accepted recently. I'm not sure if they were full PRs. Why they chose SQLite in particular. I think it's kind of because you output from the query to logs, and then from the logs, you're running queries against it, right? But those are usually like regular expression. Those are for the people who are using grep and logs all the time, sedawk, the whole nine. It's a little less brain-breaking to use SQL, and it's kind of like a known entity. So getting stuff out of it once you know what the spec is and the documentation is available for that, it's imminently Googleable. You can get quite a lot of Stack Overflow hits for most everything that you would want to do. And they take these events or these groupings of data, they arrange them in tables, and just so that we have like the foundation of a database, nobody should be worried like about databases in general. It's just a spreadsheet, columns and rows. And then you have other spreadsheets that they have some relation. That's it. Just to lay it down to brass tacks. So demo time though, I don't actually think that I convinced everybody that System Profiler sucks so much that they should want for other tools. So in the words of the rapper formerly known as Subrock, now more commonly referred to as MF Doom, please listen to my demo. So let's see if I made this in a way that I can interact. See with the screen, I know I'd be in front of the screen. So my killer demo is it makes me feel really good to be this geeky around people that might be as geeky and or geekier. That kernel extensions, that's what I'm going for. Okay, so first you go, all right, let me just run System Profiler and let's wait 3 minutes and see what it spits out at us and look through that. No, we can't do that. So I'm gonna say, hey, give me some help. And it says, all right, I'm gonna list the data types. All right, that's great. Let's list the data types. And so I said kernel extensions, so you'd say K for kernel, right? There's no K. All right, you'd say drivers, right? Kind of the same thing. There's no driver. Oh, of course, it's extensions data type, of course, right? So that's it. So now if I say, hey, give me this, and let's time that. And I am not really nervous about doing a live demo in front of people. So what I'm going to do is just a little bit of magic behind the scenes. Am I going to be able to? Yeah, I should. So I'm going to quadruple check that I don't do this incorrectly. All right, so over here, I've got OS query I that I could interact with and do a session, but instead I'm just going to say, hey, let's time OS query I doing a JSON output of this query. And a normal SQL query is, hey, just give me everything in a table, in a collection of data from kernel extensions, go ahead. That took forever. That was hard. That only took 21 seconds. So if you have to do that at scale. All right, but all right, so you see in my output, I definitely am showing off here that I've got Google Santa driver. Anyone familiar with Santa? It knows if you're naughty or nice. It's an actual, I chose that. It's not something that is something surreptitiously put on my machine. So where were we? We were presenting. Let's present again. That is my killer demo. Yo. You go ahead and run those. There's no caching that ever happens with kernel extensions for some reason. It's an infallible demo. It will always take over 20 seconds on this Core M laptop, which is state of the art until yesterday, and now I want rose gold. So a kernel extension. Even OS query, you saw Santa in that output. Even OS query has a kernel extension to be able to read out data with the privilege that you need at the kernel level of the operating system. If I was fancy, I would say like read 0 or something like that. I'm not fancy. You would commonly refer to this type of software as drivers, right? Stuff that extends the hardware that therefore needs to be particularly low level. Like I said, Google Santa project uses one. Another security-related kernel extension by a company and developer, well known in Apple InfoSec circles, as big as a Venn diagram as that can be. Stefan Esser, super creepy GitHub avatar. His company is Section N's, or Section Nines, or Section Nines. He's German. I don't want to try to pronounce that actually. He released a SUIDGuard kernel extension, and that is what Jesse Shipley spoke about. It was a response to a one-liner that essentially gave you a root bash shell by just modifying some files on disk, or making a copy and then running C against it to give yourself a root shell. And that was because of a improperly placed SUID or other things that I could remember if I'd actually prepared. It was carried out against Yosemite. And this kernel extension that they released, I'm not sure why you have to do this in the security community, is you have to say when you have a zero-day exploit, hey, here's a mitigation for it. Turns out when you rush to write some software to mitigate an issue, and Apple's gunning at that same code, they might break your stuff if you have that installed. 10.11.4 upgrades actually had issues with the SUIDGuard kext. You weren't really supposed to run it on higher than 10.10 anyway. I mean, you'd have to be a security developer to really actually know that it was patched in the way that he exploited. I'm not going to get into all that. You still, however, as a sysadmin, who are they going to call when they break the machine that it can't move? Yes, they were admins. Yes, they got this on their machine. Maybe you put it on your own machine, right? You should kind of know that you're going to break booting during an OS upgrade because of a kernel extension. You're going to kernel panic. You know, that's one of the easier ways ever to kernel panic. You should really be able to keep an eye on these things. And again, just to belabor the point a little bit more, most of the kernel side SIP implementation exists into, because Portugal, into the sandbox.kex, the same trusted BSD kernel extensions that implement OS X sandbox mechanism. They have their eggs in a basket, and it's at the kernel level. So that's good for them from a security perspective, and the fact that they are QAing one moving part. There aren't so many necessarily moving parts, except that they're completely different functions, right? There's the sandbox, and then there's the things that are protecting SIP, system integrity protection. I demoed with running System Profiler, though. If you're trying to look out for things like this as well, where people can disable SIP without even rebooting, which at first I'm like, that's cool. I can test dtrace and then turn it back. Yeah, but I just exploited SIP. I installed something that exploited SIP on my own machine. Maybe I'm not going to install that. Pedro Vilaca is the gentleman whose name I just mispronounced. This is otherwise known as OS X Reverser on the Twitters. This is where he announced this. I think you need to get your own kernel extension, sir, because he was kind of like, have fun trying to do that. So there is some assembly required. Still, if you're trying to audit all this stuff, like this, like SUIDGuard, go get a cup of coffee if you're in System Profiler, because it's going to take a little while. Versus having something that is purpose-built as a tool that returns in 0.2 seconds, a little bit better performance there. A further extension on what makes OS Query AWSM is the concept of the event stream, which is pretty basic. Just means that if there's a broadcast alert, if there's something that comes out in between when your logging period is running these queries, you don't miss it. How are you going to be able to listen for it? So it's a common computer science concept to have something publishing or pushing out data, and you have a subscriber listening to that data, kind of like that subscription to your YouTube channel about unpacking scented candles. Did I say mine? I mean, or like an RSS feed, so you don't keep having to go back and check if they got the new man spice candle. I mean a new episode. So that event stream is very important, because then you're actually not worried about something got plugged in and unplugged and no one was the wiser. It could happen within your query scheduled period. So please listen to the demo. What other classes can OS Query subscribe to? I just talked about hardware being plugged and unplugged. Here, let's use, when we're talking about a demo, let's definitely go to a demo browser, a data browser. And so this is the postquery.io site. They tell you about some of the stuff that they want you to know. And here are the tables. So it says over here that it requires a kernel extension sometimes. You need to plug it in to be able to get this table of data out. Also, you would, of course, for a event stream, you need a daemon listening in the background. You're not just going to say, hey, interactively, let me know for the next however into the future we're going to get something. So that kind of would make sense, but there are those caveats there. For Darwin, for OS 10, there's AD, there's all of the applications. I'll get back to that later. And then as we get to here, we see disk events. They talked about host intrusion detection. So if malware decides that it wants to show you one thing, like something to keep your Mac really clean, because your Mac is dirty, it's infected, you should totally install this. And once you launch this executable, oh, guess what? I'm going to download other DMGs in the background. And then a process is going to be running, and the DMG will no longer be present. So every time a process is started from a path that doesn't exist, Facebook was very interested in how that happened, when that occurred, what was the kind of audit trail, what URL did it come from. There's lots of metadata around disk images. And I think this is actually kind of, sorry, Teddy. He might be watching on the stream. Sorry. I actually think this is improperly named. How about disk image events? Because I don't want people to think about, hard drives or USB drives. They think they're being understandable or clear with the fact that there are hardware events. There's that database icon again. There's that newsstand again. That when you have a PCI, a USB, or a human input device event, it's going to log something for you. I should actually maybe, I don't know, let people read it. That would be nice too. And all of this is data that you would be able to get in an event stream. Let's go back to the video tape. Generate logged events in a stream that buffer, and then they write the logs to the disk when the disk is no longer busy. So that is something that the system decides when it comes to I/O priority or CPU priority, that they want to be just absolutely minimal on the system. They constantly strive to make sure that's that way. The breaking news updates, event stream types, that's what I was discussing there. One more thing to go on. I know people are thinking to themselves, I'm not actually a DBA or a database admin, nor am I an InfoSec. I'm not an information security guru. Which end of this thing do I blow in? How would I build up queries of things worth auditing? Hopefully, my Casper repo might show you some things that you can use right away, and hopefully will be a little bit more performant than other things that Jamf does not provide at all. But one of the things in this docs was actually after Penn State last year, they released this packs. So they grouped the queries and shown you exactly what they want run in groupings based on, okay, maybe you're not a PCI compliant, maybe you're not HIPAA, maybe you're not SOX, maybe you don't have those same things that you need to look for, but you just have a lot of admins, for example. IT compliance checks if it's encrypted, checks all the browsers, checks all the things that are persistent. You've got vulnerability management, like all the Sparkle feeds that apps are using. It's like being a physical therapist. You still gotta run. You still gotta perform on game night, right? It's about vulnerability management, not containment. Not I'm just locking it down. It's knowing that I can manage a vulnerability that's happening out there and understand its behavior before it really gets out there. This is stuff that other people came up with. You can validate as you see fit, but when there are specific outbreaks, They have specific things that they look for, that they feel are targeted. For OS 10 attacks. No one's ever heard of Spigot here, right? No. Not never. There's direct links. It gives you a little bit of a description. Sometimes this can be hard-coded. This can assume that a file path is an indication of compromise, which Teddy actually taught me at Penn State last year. Indication of IOCs, indication buzzword. I'm buzzword savvy now. Compliant. Still, this can be naive, but it is what people have found and collaborated on. Saving Throw is another project about remediating, but they only have, we've said that there should be some crossover between them, that we can either do this to just be lightweight and figure out if it's got it before worrying about removing all instances of it. Saving Throw tries to be the latter, which is actually, it's a good thing I presented this. I'll remember to talk about Saving Throw next time. Anyway, so these are the packs. So there are batteries included for you. In the config file or OS query CTL wants to start for you, those are commented out. Sometimes there can be multiple of the same tables of data across the different packs. You don't worry about it. The system will sort it out for itself. But if you want to make your own, like you have specific things you're targeting on Windows, again, coming anytime soon, trademark. I don't know when this is going to drop at all. You can have even, it's a little meta, but you can have a query that says, is this a server? Or does this have 8 gigs of RAM? Or does this have an IP address on that subnet? And then run the rest of the pack conditionally based off of that. And all of that logic can be in this config, in this pack that's delivered in a way that the daemon can pick up on it from your config. That's a little bit on the deep side. Just know that, number one, you have some stuff that you can reference to see how they make the SQL run, how Babby is formed. And number two, that other people are thinking of these things for you. So if you look for Sparkle, you'll see all. Man, you don't want to try to come up with that. Teddy Reed, my man, the myth, the legend. We're spitballing back and forth about how those results were accurately addressing the vulnerability, and this made it into the vuln management pack. And it didn't take very long. It was like Tuesday afterwards, and a push to GitHub, and that was it. And that was just because we had really boring weekends that me and Ben Tom spent way too much time finding how to do it in Python. How am I doing for time? I go on for another half hour?
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm not doing very well on slides. I've got 7 more slides. Overselling myself. If you take away nothing else from this presentation, please, browser extensions and stuff that has persistence. LaunchD, cron, RC scripts, startup items. The joke at Google is we have 2 ways to do it, deprecated or not ready yet. Apple has deprecated all of these things. Guess what? They're still running. RC scripts are, of course, still running. Cron jobs, of course, would still run. I can't say that, like, hey, here is my pack, and I'm practicing 100% what I preach. But I can say that I do look at all the Gospel and LaunchD jobs. And I fingerprint sudoers, I fingerprint Python on the system itself, so that my tool that's checking other things is not. Anyway, if you get a good handle on that, if you have it in your field of vision, you've covered the lion's share of what could bite you. And I mean, come on, what are customers going to call you about? It's that their browser's been hijacked, or hey, it says I'm infected and it needs to run a scan. I have no antivirus installed, right? In the MacAdmin Slack, people are using Bash, and I'm just like, just stop! They're doing this for the most basic loops is fine, the simple one-liner, but I prefer Python. Now, IPython is not as complex as OS X Auditor. OS X Auditor is a semi-abandoned project that was a precursor to OS X Collector by Yelp. and they actually did a straight fork of it and then ran with it. They made sure that everything worked for their environment, and they supported 100% have people full-time on OSNet Collector. But, so I looked at OSNet Auditor before I really was leveraging a lot of OS Query, before I had even pushed out more than to my canaries and testers. I could not get Safari, Firefox, Chrome going back when I looked at it. But I was able to scavenge code from there and look at all of the browser extensions and give myself some prettified output. That EA on my GitHub for using from the Casper suite is still using that Python, but I don't want to show, but damn your eyes, don't look at that, that's horrible. This is not in prod, but I've learned a couple of things about Python since I wrote that initial one. However, when it's in prod, right, you know, the sysadmin's truth is your laziness. So the browser whitelist that I've built up over time, this is about current. For Safari, for Firefox, for Chrome, and then unless you like your customers using free VPN services that turn on P2P, peer-to-peer connections, you might want to not have Hola Internet. Just saying. Luckily, Chrome has got good ways of locking it down and blacklisting certain extensions. But yeah, of course, there's a crap ton of Chrome ones. And then from here, I am looking for OS Query. I actually wrote this over the weekend. Don't worry, I actually ran this code and nothing set on fire. But I'm looking for the OS Query module. If I can import it in Python, then I got it. And if I got it, I open up OS Query D once, and I shove all my queries through it once. So I don't do multiple calls. It's super lightweight in that respect. And it's looking at every user account on the system. So if I actually ran that, it would go fast. But I'm not going to run it right now, because demoing is scary. So the whitelist I pull in, if it's OS Query D, I got it. If I don't have the Python module installed, I can just run OS Query I. So I'd like this to be good new example code. It's at the bottom of the handout. If you'd like to do stuff ad hoc, or if you'd like to distribute the Python module, you can install it with pip. You can package pip modules pretty easily. And this is what I kind of recommend, and wanted to semi-demo just showing it to you. However, it can be a little bit complex and hand-wavy. So just touching on that briefly, most of my more recent ones, they actually are definitely using OS Query, but browser extensions, I had to do that over the weekend instead of writing these slides. Not quite sure why. A log aggregator is going to be a lot better at helping you just set it and forget it, and then worry about it on the back end and get notifications from that, instead of the Casper suite not being able to do anything in aggregate across the entire fleet besides very binary on-off stuff. But it was a lot of fun to rewrite that. When it does catch something that's not in the whitelist, it collects all of the metadata about it, and it shoves it into a semi-prettified output that's a little prettier directly from Python, but this is cooler. Come on, it's street cred. Runs in 0.5 milliseconds. More demos. That auditing project, the customers at the university downloaded an app bundle that I hacked together with AppleScript. Yeah. Just so that it had a native app look all the way back to 10.5. I found PowerPC machines there in service, running OS 9. That are on WAN IP address. Anyway, so I have them run this app bundle and it actually launches, but it'll yell at them if their OS is like 10.6, because even the Python version, I wasn't very versatile back then, because imagine that, I can't QA across 7 versions of the operating system all that well. And they wanted me to send raw SQL to our database, and it turns out that if you build on current Intel processors, it will panic and completely quit on Core 2 Duos and on older. That was fun. But Google has a GMAC PyUtil for interacting with Cocoa Dialog. So AppleScript was just to launch the custom thing in an app bundle that I could sign, and all of the contents would be signed. Because I needed them to be able to download this and trust it. Inside of it, I had Google's GNAC PyUtil call up Cocoa Dialog to just ask for their email address. Then I sent them to a web form. And I said, you guys want to ask them a million questions? I don't want to. I'll pull out the data that I think is relevant, and I'll shove it into your form as part of the URL string. That I felt kind of cool about. And I really like my DBA on that he was ready to receive that. But they fill out the building, the room, their department, if it's a single or if it's grant funded, if it's research, and they talk about all of those things. I bundled a version of OS3D and the Python module and Cocoa Dialog. It was like 6 megs. Even then I was kind of like, yeah, 6 megs. Oh well. But on top of that, wait, there's more. So let's go to that other URL and make it almost still, for the people that don't know Python, illegible. So I created a CSV of the data that I got from OS Query. Let's look for Pokemon. So it runs these queries. And this is the table name, and this is the criteria. I've got to catch them all. And then for more complex ones where I'm looking for the admins group, who's an SSH user, who's an ARD, that's a little bit more complex because I need to filter that down. 248, anybody know who user ID 248 is? MacBuddy setup user, MB setup. In the butt. 1011. We didn't get a lot of that because they were in login sessions when they were running this. I don't know why I did that. I mean, but anyway, I wanted to know all of the drives that were mounted, including server shares and how full they were, and that's just giving me raw kilobyte output. I wanted to know if the disks were encrypted at all. Has about not many at all. Nothing's really down to AD. And then I take my CSV. Don't steal my API key. I'm kidding. There isn't real API keys with Box. You can't do anonymous uploads with Box 2.0 API. So this is the 1.0 version. Again, deprecated, right? Guess what? It works. So I took the XML response and I gave myself, some output. And then if it's really old, I said, okay, whatever. I needed to pull sidebar lists. I remember a discussion in chat where you said, yes, that is where recent servers are. And they changed an LCAP. And if you look at Frogger, yes, I nerd sniped Frogger to extract LCAP's version, and we all got a blog post out of that. Mikey blogs here. So great success was had by all, of course, and by all, I mean me, and my customers at this university, when my Python didn't crash and burn on itself. So 2 other things, because I'm near conclusion, is for distributing those queries over the internet. Here's a TLS server, meaning HTTPS, right? So that you'll trust the endpoints that are essentially asking for audit information, so they don't get messed with. You're not necessarily worried about like rogue queries. It's more about that you'll actually get the correct data source pushed out. There's another project which they've plugged me a bunch of times. I don't know why I didn't plug them, so pardon me for just like throwing in, hey, a browser tab. Here's these guys. Henry and folk, admin on the Slack. They produce Zentral. Zentral is, to put it in really briefly, it's everything to everyone. And it's OS Query powered. It's about remediating based on OS Query results. So instead of worrying about the JSS being able to efficiently send inventory or run you can have Central get that notification and push a notification to Slack. You can interact with it multiple ways, slice it, dice it, however you would like. So just those two quickly, and I'm not actually done because it's only 7:28. Did I say half? The Godwin's law of MacAdmins. I said that keeping browsers clean was important, but also the stuff that's persistent on the disk. If you're just relying on the Jav Casper suite, then stuff that's persistent, you're going to find out about it in a reasonable amount of time. I've been working on getting my Python good with Pylint and clean and readable by the community. That I had this launchd version. Way to check launchd up there in an extension attribute. And one of the things that it's going to be called by, one of the things that it's going to call once you can get out of OS query is what the program arguments are. And I was running this library application support Adobe FP feedback service, analytics. If you have auto update turned on your Adobe Flash, you got something you did not bargain for. Was antivirus going to check this? Is anti-malware going to know or care? They're going to hope that you actually patched your Flash, even though really they should be saying to uninstall. 20.0.0.235, because Adobe knows version's good, is when this was released, along with 70+ CVE security patches. So it's kind of like, do you want the patches? Would you like an analytics service with that? And we figured out in the .cfg, the MMS CFG, where you could turn that off. But someone if you click that link, you'll see my weighing in on actual feedback from Adobe product. If not product support, then I think someone in the product. No, this is the Flash team. So the gentleman said, that wasn't supposed to ship. Which I can't believe. It's Adobe. I mean, they run a tip-top shop. Verifying that something malignant hasn't been slipped into the build or release process is a really good idea. And that relies on looking at behavior. And the things that are going to bite you are the things that are actually able to run persistently. Like an analytics service that you didn't realize they were going to install automatically. You can also check user-level launch agents across the disk. So even if a user messes up their home folder, even if they're standard users, they could still get persistent stuff running on every login. In auto package, we are super paranoid about that stuff is signed. But if the build process gets compromised, it doesn't matter. I had done the commit to Git of this, so like I knew, hey, something new, you've got mail, right? Like something new shows up. I knew what it was, and like it's got Adobe in the name, but really, SMH. And I hope that I've convinced you to check those two boxes. Browser extensions, because man, people really don't like it when they get redirected to porn sites. And launchd jobs, anything that's persistent on the disk. Those are good things to check for. And this is a really low level, low system resource intensive way to do it. If we have questions, I can take them. Otherwise, I could go to the project page and show you a little bit about contributing. This is my last slide. Thank you. Because usually I say like questions and people are like, you have filled my brain with things. I don't like that.
Can you go back to slide 2?
Sure. I learned how to use DACSet for this presentation and it didn't crash and go boom. How's about on the Google Hangout? People on Periscope can only send me hearts.
Nobody's piping up so far as I can tell.
Or Slack? Yep. Are either of the OS3 channels on Slack?
I have a question.
Yes,
It's
sir.
super specific.
Great.
Okay.
And it's right up his alley.
You kidding?
So we're using Monkey Report at the moment.
Yes.
And Monkey Report uses a shell scripts and
Yes.
whatnot to collect the data.
Huh?
System profiler, I imagine, for a lot of it. No, I definitely
It could.
system profiler. Is the idea that this is built into SAL to do sort of the same thing, like where you have shell scripts versus this, you know, monkey report versus SAL? I just
Well,
use
so-
SAL, but
So
it's
Sal,
interesting.
so Sal is Graham saw a need for something. Quite specifically, his boss said, top processes running on these machines because they're supposed to be super locked down. If people are running something extra that's taking up too much CPU and stopping them from doing their jobs and isn't Java, I didn't say that, then there's something wrong. We want to know across the entire fleet. And so he said, all right, well, the lowest cost way of getting all processes, like people don't think of top as heavy, but if you're constantly trying to tell, and you have to be taking snapshots. So he wrote an OSQuery pack distributed with Sal, and he was off to the races. And he did a specific logging output for just him that Sal scraped on the post flight to send it back up in the way of a report. He just added it to his report. So how Monkey report could leverage the same thing, it could be as complex as that. Because that's a little bit deep. He had a very specific need. He was able to fill it in a efficient way for his purposes. I don't think that it's currently active in the code right now. I'm not sure. He did plugin sync is what was more important to him, which is that any script that you want to run, that you want to push down from the server, you don't have to just push down a pack from the server. And his concept of pushing down a OS query was that it would then feed into a dashboard, a plugin, quite specifically to visualize. So he wants you to be able to have all those pieces and wire it into your instance from both sides of, okay, I'm adding to the pack, and that's going to get pushed down to clients, and I'm adding a place to display it. So I'm not sure how that would work in the monthly report scheme of things. So I recommend this. And I recommend JSON just because YAML isn't in system Python. The Facebook guys would love me to plug some YAML, so just for you guys. They're not watching. But so if you say, I'm going to run this query with JSON output, then you have something that you can pipe into Python parsing and slice and dice that data any way that makes sense for Monkey report. And then you may be golden. I mean, those are snapshots. I've already written down all the stuff that I used to do in extension attributes and how I would visualize that in Sal, and I am totally going to get to it very soon now, trademark, right? So this is what I would recommend as a, hey, know what you want. You're going to have to know how to visualize or what you want to see in the way of a visualization for it. So Monkey Reports visualization plugins would be a good place to look to say how you want like that end up. I'm sure there's plenty of examples, like encryption status, like all that type of stuff is already there for the most part. You can swap all this out at your discretion of, okay, conditionally, do I have OSQuery? Do I have the OSQuery Python module? Otherwise, I'm just going to shell out instead. You can take it all the way there.
That's pretty cool. Thanks.
I had something. I just went out of my head.
Okay, I'll look at something else, and then you'll interrupt me, okay?
All right.
Deal. So, on the OSQuery site on GitHub, guess how you ask for a feature request? You open an issue, and then they close it. So, they tag it because it's a feature. I said it's Darwin specific just to give them a heads up. And I gave them an example of what type of data I wanted returned from OSQuery. And they said, hey, guy who wrote this, along with Midas when he was at Etsy, not so long ago. That was that other project I was referring to in Python. This is some craziness for open source, right? Just like, you want to know what they're doing cross-platform? You want to know what they're doing for OS X, for Linux? esoteric stuff. They're really into EFI and BIOS exploits. So kernel introspection, and then this I love more than anything else. What doesn't fit the model? Don't ask for these things. So I don't like necessarily that there is shell history. You can look at a user's shell history. We assume, however, though, that developers aren't doing stuff that they consider private. I mean, you get tweet from the shell, you do all these things with the shell, it's so hype. But really, that's not necessarily stuff that you're worried about when it comes to privacy. Browser history is. They don't want to know. So they're putting this up as like a skull with a stick through it to say, hey, don't go there. And we've had discussions about it in the OS query community to say, hey, this is an anti-pattern, at least for OS query. We don't think that we would retain the trust of our customers if we had this shipping as a core part of the product. People can build their extensions in C++ however they would like to create more tables and audit it as they see fit. But they're throwing that out there. So that's just to say, hey, if you have pull requests that would like that as well, all the documentation is in the repo as well. And there's a separate repo under the OS query organization for, if I can type, it's because it's not rose gold. OS query platform. So I put a link to it in the top of the gist, and I think from the handout. So if you want to access it quite directly, they made changes so I could specifically run it ad hoc without a full pip install and just reference it as a path. They made sure that that would work. And so you've got example code for that here, or both places. How you do the open of OS query D, so that you're specifically shoving through as many queries as you want in one open of the process.
So I remember the question. So for someone who's not particularly Python savvy, how would you estimate the learning curve?
Well, it's like a solution in search of a problem until you have the problem, right? If you want to do the one-liner in an EA of what is actually being called, I put it in your flag to say, hey, this is what is the bash part, is what gets passed when I run OS query. So when I run OS query, I'm saying select name, path, and kernel extensions. That same shell command here, however you want to slice or dice that, you'll get some output, right? You can printify it in just like text, or you could do, I never even did the shell, did I? So this is, Jeremy asked me to go to slide 2. So being built with love at Facebook, right? Being built with love at Facebook. You can say, what are the tables that are active? And you can say with help how you change its output to CSV or other things. So the point is that you get something out of it that you can use. You maybe TAM software, it doesn't need to work in so many spaces, and therefore they're not trying to provide solutions for those other spaces, like log aggregation, they're definitely not, right? So you're going to run that some other way. You're going to get that log output with OS query CTL if you'd like. To get it in some other way of being able to do it on a schedule with check-ins for jams, so it's in the same inventory as other things about your fleet, is, hey, I'm going to run a one-off OS query I with flag output to it. And there isn't necessarily a heap load of documentation about doing that exact use case, because they, again, assume that you're wanting to do a full implementation. Where the heck was that? It was so close. But so here we are in the docs. The user developer wiki needs help. It's written by developers, so that are really great at C++ and SQL queries. Yeah, so OS query I is the shell. Here's what you can pass to it at the command line. However you want to slice and dice that to get, Jamf wants very binary type or very succinct things that it can report on. So, I'm not misrepresenting it.
Just that string states and integers.
It's really not packet versions. All right, my snark is now officially turned off. Anybody else? You've seen more than you do. You would have cared to know.
So I just wrote an EA yesterday to get the graphics card information out of System Profiler. As I wrote it, I realized I'm going to extend the life. I'm going to extend the run of the inventory update by another 25 seconds, like you said there.
So if it loses internet connection in the middle of a run, it caches all of that local, so it can send it when it has a connection again, right? Because it's the best inventory system far. Dorothy. The DSL part that I was talking about, it wasn't just so I could drop buzzwords that are acronyms. The domain-specific language of, they've already expressed system information that you can orchestrate, that you can get out at scale in the most efficient way possible. So if there's a table for that, if there's an app for that, you can not have to write that code yourself. I just wanted to not have to call to System Profiler ever again. No. Yay, 15 minutes.
All right.
No longer going live.
So we got about 15 minutes, so we'll leave the time for open discussion. So we're still looking for a location for next month. So if anybody either on the screen or Slack or here wants to host, please let me know and we'll talk and try to settle that. But we'll be back here in June, and we may have a preview of a certain presentation that might be happening at PSU at that time. So,
443.
So yeah, we're going to open up to discussion, and thanks for coming in.
Want me to kill it?
Sure.